the reason I tell my story is because then others realize that's my story too. Like my ideal coaching clients are accountants and CPAs who have had childhood trauma, and it's showing up in the workplace in some way, shape, or form.
Welcome to the Concierge CPA. I'm Jackie Meyer, founder of the Concierge Accountant Program and TaxPlanIQ software. This is a podcast for accounting firm owners and influencers who are pursuing world-class service. We discuss their path to excellence, their daily habits, and what influences them and their work. We believe that every person has a unique message that can positively impact the world. Stick around till the end of the show. We'll reveal how you can be our next guest. Let's go, y'all. Welcome to the Concierge CPA podcast. I'm Jackie Meyer. I have, what's ironic, a couple days ago when I recorded, I said my new BFF, Julie, this is my other new BFF, Amber. I wish I had talked to her a lot more often, but we randomly met at, was it Engage last year? And it really hit it off, got super deep real quick. But Amber is a pretty amazing person. She has a coaching business. She works with the accounting industry. She knows all about all the ins and outs of what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so, Amber, welcome. I'm glad to have you.
Thank you. Yeah. And I want to echo BFF because that first night I met you, I saved you in my phone as like my new BFF. So
Aww.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so sweet. So yes, Amber Setter, the amazingness is here today. So Amber, kind of fill everyone in a little bit more on your background and what, where you're at now.
Sure. So I started my career as an accountant. Back in the olden days, you only needed 4 years to go to do that. So made it in under that 150-hour rule. But I actually really love education. And so when I decided that, accounting is actually not the work that I want to do, but I still chose to stay in the profession. I've been in it over 20 years now. I went and did a master's in leadership studies.
Mm-hmm.
That just blew me wide open, where I was like, oh my goodness, there's so many amazing concepts and theories and wisdom in a master's in leadership program that wasn't made available to me during an accounting curriculum. It's not on the CPA exam.
Sure.
And so it really made like a whole career out of how do we develop the whole person.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in campus recruiting, talking to people about careers in accounting and CPA licensure and choosing the right career path. Worked in learning and development, building a corporate university from the ground up. Have now been coaching for about 12 years. And part of this, I've been either in private practice just by myself. I've been an internal coach at PwC, just coaching the PwC employees. And then where I find myself today is leading a coach team with conscious public accountants. And our mission is to teach accountants how to grow their career without losing their soul. So fun work.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's an interesting motto. But so needed, right? So the thing about Amber is she gets real quick, So, hang tight. We're going to go on a little roller coaster here. So did you work at PwC as an accountant or just from the coaching angle?
No, I worked for EY as an accountant and I did an audit internship. And at the end of it, I turned down the offer because it didn't feel like the right fit for me. Went through campus recruiting again, and I chose to work at a prominent regional firm in the Silicon Valley. And I worked there specifically in tax and really loved the people that I work with, but I didn't feel like doing tax work was like my easiest thing to do. And I remember distinctly like my peer in the cubicle next to me, like she was just so good naturally at it and I wasn't. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I gotta play to my strengths because I can do this work, but it's not what I would call zone of genius work. Comes out of a book that I've read that I love, The Big Leap.
Yeah.
So, but I love the people in the profession. And I loved at the time the people in the firm that I was working with. So I just reinvented myself a couple of times within that firm and ended up staying there for 10 years before I went on being on my own and then being a coach at PwC.
Okay, awesome. And so, okay, gosh, so many different avenues to go down here. So first of all, I'm in my last class for my doctorate in leadership, and I'm writing a book, which is really fun. Something that a lot of people don't realize is there's actually not really still to this day a true definition of a leader. It's very theoretical around, everyone kind of has their own definition. There's a lot of interesting words that or roles and whatnot that are not really that well defined. What led you to do the master's?
I'll answer that, and then I want to talk about leadership and how I would define it because I'm a nerd.
Okay,
but
awesome.
what led me to a graduate degree was, I'll be very honest, like part ego. Like back in that time, I was, I had an identity around the more I achieve and the more letters after my name, that's going to make me, get more approval in the world.
I know nothing about feeling like that.
More lovable.
Yeah.
Right? More lovable.
I would never understand that. Yeah, never understand that.
So that's what drove me towards a graduate degree, but specifically why I chose the master's in leadership was because I was at that point where I'd done a couple busy seasons. I'm like, I don't want to do accounting. I know that. And then my next default was like, well, I'm not going to do an MST like I thought I was. And then I looked at MBA programs that would require an accounting or finance class. And I was like, I don't want to study any more numbers. Well, what the heck am I going to study?
Yeah.
And I found this amazing program at the University of San Diego where I had an interdisciplinary specialization where I did my 5 core classes in leadership. And then the electives I could do in any of their graduate programs. So at the time going in, I thought, well, maybe I'll take like a upper division HR class or something. I ended up, because I didn't even know what coaching was at the time, I ended up taking a lot of classes adjacent to coaching, like counseling and marital family therapy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can define coaching too, because that's another one that's like, woo, done. No idea what's going on there, right?
Super misunderstood. Yeah, but that's really, it was part ego, but I would also say part divine intervention because I ended up in a really phenomenal program that wasn't just academic. I had to write papers on like, I was in a group and what are the group dynamics that I saw going on and how did I show up and how did other people influence how I showed up and really kind of examining myself. So lots of personal development in that approach.
That's awesome. Okay. And before we get into definitions of things, why choose accounting? Like, obviously, it wasn't necessarily for you. What brought you to it?
I think there's a part that I was conscious of at the time and the stuff I wasn't yet conscious of. So what I was conscious of is back then, I think it really offered an exceptional career path.
Mm-hmm.
You could do 4 years of accounting and came out. I got a job offer at like $51,000. I was living in the Silicon Valley. I had nominal student debt and I could afford to live on my own. Mm-hmm. I put all those kind of things in there because I don't think that the profession now has the same value proposition for people.
Yeah.
At an unconscious level, I think there was the parts where I really craved to have a stable life. And when I was growing up, I had parents who were very unstable. And my dad in particular, he's an alcoholic. And his sister, who was an accountant and would take me into like her office environments growing up during winter breaks and spring break, like she had a very stable life. She had a nice home. She was dressed nice. She was intelligent.
Sure.
And I think somewhere in me, I remembered like, oh, if I choose like my Aunt Martha Ann, then I could have a nice, stable life.
Yeah.
And make good money. Whereas if I do things like my parents did, that's not available to me.
Yeah. So I have a really similar story because we have a lot of similarities in the way that we were raised in really unstable environments. And that's exactly why I went into accounting, was the stability, wanted to make sure you could take care of yourself financially. But it's so neat that you were able to kind of carve your own path and find your own way. And so if there are people listening or watching that maybe did the same thing, there is still hope. There's a lot of cool things that you can do after being an accountant. You can go into coaching, there's a lot of mental health opportunities for our industry for sure. So yeah, that's really cool. I love it. Okay, so define leadership for us.
Okay, this is what I love. Well, I think there's a distinction between leader and leadership. Like, I don't mean to be such a grammar nerd, but one is a noun, leader, and one is a verb. Okay. And I love, back in 2005, when I started my graduate program, we read a book called Leadership on the Line. And if anyone is curious about it, you can go to my website at conscious.cpa. We have actually like a recommended reading list because I'm a nerd and I love to read, but This book's in the top 5.
I will be checking that out ASAP. Okay.
Oh, we've got it all. We got some deep work, we got healing, we got nerdy, academic books. Nothing on accounting per se, but in Leadership in the Line, they talk about the distinction between a technical problem and an adaptive challenge. So a technical problem is something like, I get a flat tire. I can quickly identify what that is and come up with the solution, right? Like, okay, I know what a flat sounds like, feels like, and to solve it, I can call AAA, I can pull my jack out, I can phone a friend, like easy peasy. An adaptive challenge is very different because it's something that's never existed. We grapple with what is the actual problem, and we definitely don't know how to solve it. So a few years ago, I remember being in the industry, working adjacent to learning and development. And it's like the taxation of cryptocurrency. Like, people couldn't even articulate what crypto was. Like, I still don't know that I fully get it.
No one does.
Yeah. Let alone like, how are we going to tax it? And I remember we brought in like a really amazing professor, Annette Nellen from San Jose State, like talking us through, because the IRS had sent notices to clients, and she's like, well, it might be like taxed like livestock. It's like, really, a coin's going to be taxed like a pig or a horse?
Yeah. I remember people making those weird comparisons. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an adaptive challenge, is like, it's never existed. And I think that's really leadership, when you're going through it and you can hardly even get your finger on the pulse of what is the challenge, and in our profession right now, the adaptive challenges that we have around the pipeline, some people think like, let's just go get more warm bodies. I'm like, well, how about we take care of the people that are in it? Like, they already got the 150. So it's complicated, and exercising leadership is actually moving people through adaptive challenges, not technical problems.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So I have to get your opinion, I suppose, on one of like the oldest leadership debacles ever, which is like, was Hitler a leader because he was so evil? Like, what makes a good leader versus like how do you define that?
Well, he certainly mobilized people to do things. And I think what Hitler really exemplifies is that leadership can be dark, and that extreme followership can have really perilous outcomes. And I actually see some of this in the coaching world, like specifically with transformational leadership programs, where I went through the first program I went through. It was amazing and I loved it and it's great. But it's like, if I go to Google search the name of that training, it will say accomplishment coaching, and one of the defaults is cult because it literally changes people's lives.
Yeah.
But then you end up like trapped in it, doing all kinds of work for them, not making money. And you're like, wait, what am I doing with my life? And it's like, well,
that kind of sounds a lot like an accounting firm job.
Yeah, it kind of is a little bit, right? I don't know that you get the personal transformation as much, but yeah, that's the dark side.
Yeah. Okay. So, I love that. I think that's a great definition. I don't think I could be as eloquent, and I'm still literally in the program. Oh my gosh. So, okay, what about coaching? Define coaching for people, because everyone's so confused, and until you go get a graduate degree about it, you don't need to really understand the difference that much. But it's important, I think, for people, if they're getting coaching versus consulting or counseling, to know what you should expect from that, right?
Absolutely. So coaching is a word that's used very, very liberally. And so I find myself even writing or identifying as a professional coach, meaning like I've gone to school and for it, and I've had my work listened to, supervised. I have a code of ethics. I adhere to core competencies when I'm coaching somebody. So if you're going to hire a coach, I would really recommend that people do their research and understand, is somebody actually trained as a coach, or if not, they're probably being more of a consultant and giving advice.
Yeah.
So what a coach does is, the International Coach Federation, which not a lot of people know, but it was actually pioneered by two former accountants who came over into the coaching world. But the
I had no idea. Okay, that's interesting.
I coached for like 8 years before I found that out. Yeah.
Wow.
So the ICF defines it as like maximizing being in the space of like curiosity and introspection where it maximizes somebody's personal and professional potential. So in the space of coaching, the coachee, when my clients show up to a call, they're driving the agenda. I say, what's important for us to talk about? And what do you want to leave our conversation with? And so I'm as coach asking a lot of questions, helping them to get deeper insights, and then having them come up with action that's going to move them forward in the way that they want. Oftentimes people say it's not therapy because therapy is like, where am I today and what happened in the past and how's the past showing up today? And coaching is, where am I today and where do I want to be in the future and how do I get there? I don't think it's that simple, because also one of our competencies as a coach is to help people discern their themes and their habitual ways. And if I don't know what happened in the past and their formative experiences, I can't help them break free from the chains of their automatic ways of thinking and feeling. So I go to the past with people in service of having them catapult forward much faster.
Okay. Yeah. I think the way that I like to remind myself, because coaching is my core major in the program, and I have to admit, I'm the first of all the frauds. I've been calling myself a coach because I had a business coach and I thought it was all the same thing, and I wouldn't call what we were doing in the masterminds coaching. It's more consulting, like you said. You're training them on a topic, giving them homework. Coaching is more about allowing the person to transform themselves, bring out those ideas and concepts themselves, which is so difficult for someone raised very codependent, where you really want to control everybody. It's like learning how to coach others is really, really difficult to do, because you can't micromanage the process and you can't control like where it's going and that kind of thing. But it's so interesting.
Yeah. And what I would add to the challenges specifically for those of us who've worked like in accounting and client service is, when you're in that world, like the more you know, the greater the wisdom, the greater the bill rate, right? And in coaching, the less I know, the better.
Yeah, so isn't that crazy?
How to like shut up and not have an opinion and ask powerful questions. That's the value, right? That's the real value, is somebody assuming that the other person sitting with me is the expert on their life, because it turns out they actually are. And when I did my ethics training actually for coaching, a really interesting thing that I learned was that study that they did when it came to financial planning and the human brain. And what they found is, when a financial advisor was giving advice, that person, the other person receiving the advice, like their brain just goes into cruise control. You're not like actively doing something. So
okay, I need a copy of that study, because that's how I describe like these tax preparers that are like vomiting information onto their clients about, here's a tax planning idea, and then nothing ever transpires because the client's like, whoa, like I'm done with this, right?
But you could still do it, right? They could still give them some information, but then they have to stop and say, given the different strategies that I've offered, what might make a difference for you? And then somebody moves out of cruise control, like, oh, wait, I got to actually steer the wheel and I need to critically think and I need to digest what you said. And then I can see how it might make a difference in my world. And that is the big distinction between in that coaching versus just giving advice.
That. Now, I believe it's, if anyone's interested, even if you don't want to be a professional coach, I'll tell you a great book that I love about it is Jim Collins, I believe. It's called Coaching Something. It's got like a kind of spiritual side to it, but he has the best questions. Like I've really reread the book like 5 times. What's like a favorite of yours?
A favorite book I've read a lot?
Yeah.
The Big Leap. I love the book, The Big Leap. It's about, it has a picture on the front of a fish in a small fish bowl jumping into a big one. And it talks about like, what's the difference between our zone of incompetence, competence, excellence, and genius. So incompetence, like I couldn't be a marine biologist. Like, I don't know about the tides, I barf if I'm out too deep. Like that's not something I can do. Then there's your zone of competence. Like I could do my tax return if I needed to. Like I could do that, but it will drain me.
Yeah,
right?
I do not want to do that.
Right. You delegate that. And then there's your zone of excellence, which you usually well compensated for. People, you're good at it, but that's a period of stagnation actually. The zone of genius is like, when you're working on something and it doesn't feel like work, you lose track of time. It's way more abundant. And so really people come to coaching, I would say, as individuals, not when like a company comes to us, but an individual comes when they're in the wrong zone. They're not doing the work that they were meant to do that's going to have the most impact and purpose and meaning for them.
Okay. I need to reread that book. I think that we're always constantly evolving and changing. Do you see that people's zones of genius change as they evolve too? Or does it seem to always be the same thing?
So it took me a while to understand that, because in the book he talks about if you distill things away, your zone of genius is always the same. But I didn't feel that way until I did enough. Which for me, I realized like my zone of genius is really in creation and in creating things that, support people. So I created a whole, marketing strategy for a recruitment, when I was in campus recruiting. I created a learning and development, a whole corporate university. I created my business, I co-create career paths and life paths with people as accountants. I create leadership development programs. I just created an article, do a lot of thought leadership, and an article will go live today. Like that's really when I'm in my zone, is in creation. And so it looks maybe a little bit different, but it kind of distills down to this thing that I really do where I thrive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. So tell everybody about the article.
Yeah, so I'm really excited today. The Cal CPA published in their monthly magazine an article I wrote, which is The Dawn of a New Era. And it's really this article. It's been like, it was living inside of me for a little while before I just one morning sat down and wrote it. But my observation has been that we have to be honest, right? The past few years, ever since COVID, like the professions felt really hard. And when we look at spiritual transformation and sort of what happens at an individual level, I feel like our collective profession has been going through this, which is starting off with this like dark night of the soul. And a dark night of the soul is when you go through a period where you just start waking up and you start questioning your beliefs. Like, do I need to work 55 mandatory billables, during busy season? Because busy season never ends anymore. Do I need to work mandatory Saturdays? Do I really need to respond to clients in 24 hours, right? All of these sort of beliefs that we've held that have been programmed into us, we're re-examining, does that even matter anymore? And when you're in that dark night, it's really hard. It doesn't feel good, but it's so imperative because from there, you get awareness to something new, right? And so consciousness or awareness precedes choice. and choice precedes change. And you can't change until you realize something isn't working.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been really hard because as a profession, we're grappling and we're not really sure on what's to come and how it's going to get better. But it's such like an important piece of transformation is to re-examine and go, that doesn't work, right? So here we are really examining more of like, what does it really mean to have a happy and healthy life? Like, how can I be an accountant and still be enjoying things and not working in this old world way?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of adaptive challenges, but it's so necessary. And really some of the work that we're doing now as coaches, you know, pre-COVID, it used to be like people come in like, I want to get a promotion or I want to buy a house. I want to grow my book of business. And now the coaching is more intrinsic. Like, what do I really want out of life? And how do I really want to build a practice that sustains people and nourishes people? Because how it is now is burning people out and they just jump ship and this can't work. So it's been really rewarding work lately. But that was sort of, you know, why this article has been brewing in me, where I was like, I got to write about this and express this because it's not just happening with one person, it's this theme. And when you coach in an industry in a niche, as our firm does, you get to see where, hey, is that Amber that's just struggling with that? Or is that like a lot of people are having the same challenges and struggles?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Gosh, so much to unpack there, but I've got like a billion other things to talk to you about. So let's see. Everyone check out that article for sure. I'm going to go read it right away. It sounds amazing. Another initiative or creative endeavor that you did, which I am like very, admire this in you so much, is like a mental health toolkit that you did for the AICPA. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I specifically did it for their members in the PCPS, so that's private company practice standards, but really creating a toolkit so firms could have resources to do webinars or, you know, have conversations around mental health. And the genesis of it is, I mean, it's kind of twofold. So obviously COVID happened and derailed people's lives. And that summer of 2020, I remember sitting in a webinar where I was involved at the time with Cal CPA. I mean, I'm still involved, but I was involved in leadership at the time. And I remember they were talking about how important mental health was. And somebody was like sitting there up like this rigid and like in a navy blue suit. And they looked like, we all knew probably they're sitting at their house at their kitchen table, but it's like looking really polished and professional, like mental health is very important. We should talk about this. And in my mind, I'm like, no one's going to open up to that. Like,
yeah,
nobody's going to open up to like, this is an important conversation. You know, you have to model the realness of the moment. And so what I did was really sort of flip the script on how to have a conversation about mental health, which was, okay, here's my title slide, and you can see that I'm a CPA and you can see my other credentials. But what you don't know, and that was slide 2, was a picture of me with my mom on the day that I was born. And I talked about how my mom has significant mental health issues. You know, she's had addiction problems. I already mentioned my dad, and that, you know, I was going to talk about my story, not only what it's like to live with people that have these challenges, but really the impact that had on me and how I showed up in my career. So it just felt like the right thing to do. And I'm just very, very grateful to the AICPA for the opportunities. I did a lot with them, and pretty much I just went to them and I'm like, hey, and I don't know if you've read this, but I was like, you guys did an awesome article. It was like February of 2020, maybe, that it came out. And it was called Depression in the CPA on the cover of their magazine. And I'm like, this is phenomenal. Wow. They put this out and like well-timed.
Yeah.
They couldn't have predicted there was going to be a pandemic. I'm like, and we need more. We need a lot more of this. And so they linked me up with the right people in that organization. either that had been personally impacted with suicides in their family or were passionate. And it just kind of got me out to like several different places and spaces with the AICPA, later with firms, to be able to really talk about mental health in a unique and different way.
Yeah, that's really neat. What do you think the future of the profession holds? What is working? What's like obvious, like everyone needs to change this right away kind of thing?
That's a hard one to answer because it's so, it's kind of like different. I was in this conversation with a group. They were doing like an informational interview with a state society. And I'm like, the challenge of being a state society is you guys try to be everything to every practitioner, and all the practitioners are so different. You know what I mean? So to answer that, like, what's the one thing? I would just say, even beyond accounting, that everyone needs to realize they really have the power to design their own life. And whatever is going to make them happiest, whatever they want is possible, but they don't really realize they have the agency. And there's a lot of like victimhood and a lot of unconsciously have designed their lives so as to fit into society. And frankly, our society is wildly unhealthy. So I think that would be like the big thing for everyone to know, like know your power and know your worth.
Have you looked a lot at like, is it Denmark and Finland, and how those societies seem to be so much happier than ours, and like the reason why? I like go down these rabbit holes of like trying to put together like what do they have over there that we don't have, kind of thing, Yeah,
I haven't read studies, but I have lived overseas. So I lived in Italy, and Italy has this expression, what is it? Something about the dolce far niente, which is, and not, my Italian accent's weak right now, but it's the sweetness of doing nothing. And I remember I actually went and lived there just before I started my full-time career in accounting. I went and found a job on the internet to be a nanny. And I remember coming back and my grandma reflecting to me like, gosh, you're so patient. Like, we're in a store and it's like, because I just lived for 3 months, a very slow pace of life. And in Europe, they take all of August off. And so that's actually been a goal of mine to get to, is like, so this summer I'm taking all of August off. Like, I just, I already haven't worked 40 hours and I don't know how long, like a week. I just don't do that anymore. And it's just, I've got other things that believe me, I volunteer my time and I do stuff with my daughter, but I've just really tried to intentionally craft my life. And I think other cultures just don't have to grind. Like, we're so caught in the grind over here. And I think especially our industry that is so driven by compliance deadlines and external. And get it. It is super chaotic. Like, it's super messy. I don't want to disavow that. Like, I live in San Diego and they just extended our tax deadline and payments. I'm like, for flooding. And this is the second year in a row. I'm like, I didn't barely get like that much rain here. Like,
I know. I've been talking to a colleague there, and I saw in the news like these flooded streets. I'm like, are you okay over there? And he's like, everything's fine. It's so crazy.
It's the media. They're like, there's no one flooded street in all of San Diego County with millions of residents, but let's put this one on there. And, it's just like the media just picks on all the worst stuff.
So that Italian phrase or motto reminds me of what I love about Costa Rica. They have the concept of pura vida, the pure life. And so it's about just like caring about what's important, family, going slower. I was talking to a realtor down there last time I was there, and he was talking about how much trouble a couple that has an American and a Costa Rican, like how much they butt heads, because the Costa Rican is like very laid back and like they'll get to it when they get to it. And the American is just like, go, go, go. We got to be like so hardcore. And those cultures are just so hard to mesh. But I mean, Costa Rica is one of the blue zone areas, which if people don't know, the blue zones are like where people live the oldest in the world. Of course, some of them are going away, which is sad. But yeah. Okay.
Costa Rica is amazing. I went there for the first time last summer. And when you talk about this will be like a great analogy for me, because sometimes I feel like I have a Costa Rican marriage in my head, which is my old way of operating. It's like, you need to get it done, get shit to do.
Okay.
And my new way of like, it's okay. Like, you can slow down. Like, it's fine that there's 64 unread messages in your inbox. Like, you'll get to them when it matters, just chill.
Yeah, I love that. All right. Now, I don't know how much you want to talk about the book that you're writing, but I know that it's been quite the passion project. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I'm happy to talk about it. I'm going to move down, turn off my space heater. I'm sweating now.
Okay.
Keep it real.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have been working on and off of creating a book, and really trusting the process and not being like, oh, it should be done, because it's evolved since COVID. So the book is sort of like a memoir self-help book where I tell the story of my life to wake other people up to possibility. And one of the big things is, it's really, how does the child that came out of addiction, well, I didn't have addiction. Well, I had addiction to achievement, right? But
Sure.
having parents who were addicts or mental health, and how I've had a healthier and successful life. And a big part of, I've done a lot of different things in my journey, from therapy and counseling and hiring coaches. But one of the things I'm a big proponent of is talking about psychedelic-assisted therapy, which might be taboo for some. I get it. I grew up in the 1980s with all of the drugs are bad programming.
Right.
And I would add, there was a period of time when my mom was homeless from her drug addiction.
Yeah.
So I was very judicious about that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're paying attention to this part of the news, we anticipate, I say we as I'm a self-identified psychonaut, it should be that the FDA will approve MDMA for the treatment of PTSD in the coming year. Yeah. And in Oregon, there's already legal psilocybin service centers. Colorado is just going through creating their regulations to have things be opened up. So more and more it's being destigmatized, but I've had just profound. And so that's sort of the book. Is it a book for, are we going to completely name it around plant medicine and healing? I'm not sure. It might be broader, more of consciousness, but yeah. I just hired some new ghostwriters, and we're just kind of in the process.
Okay. To kind of get to the next layer of where you want to go with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. That's really neat. Yeah. I think something I really admire about you that we've talked about in depth is how open and transparent you are with the life that you've had. And I mean, I'm still not even there yet with sharing kind of my familial issues and whatnot. But I think as we get older, the more you feel like you kind of have to get that out there. And so I just think it's so neat that you're so open about it, because I know how hard it can be to discuss. And I'm really looking forward to reading the book. So
thank you. Well, that's the reason I tell my story, is because then others realize that's my story too. My ideal coaching clients are accountants and CPAs who have had childhood trauma, and it's showing up in the workplace in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And, because coaching is confidential, I can't tell you the amazing stories, but it's godly, it's divine. These people just come and keep finding me. And also, if you look at the data, I love the book, The Body Keeps the Score, but in that book, he talks about that 1 in 4 children are raised by a parent who's an alcoholic. 1 in 3 families, couples engage in domestic violence. and 1 in 5 children have been sexually assaulted. And I've heard about all that trauma when I coach people. And so what happens is that happens, and maybe they processed it, maybe they haven't, but it shows up in their leadership. It shows up in their ability to connect or not connect with another human. And so when I was a baby coach, I didn't get that. I was like,
baby coach.
Like, here's your 5-step process to delegation. Like,
right.
But delegation's about trust. Like, can you really trust someone else? And if you grew up
yes.
experiences and you can't trust people, then you're not going to delegate. And so we don't kind of go to that past a little bit. Like, I can't help someone, break that up and really transform.
Yeah, I know. I realized how much trust was an issue in my own business. And you kind of come to a point where, well, I personally almost like broke, like physically and mentally, before I could get to the point of like, I can't do all of this myself. I was doing like 4 people's jobs. I had a newborn baby. And that was kind of my breaking point of like, my mind just went, I was like at least half as smart and still half as smart as I used to be. I used to be a lot smarter. But trust was a big factor. And then I remember a strategic consultant a couple years ago telling me that, and I had never heard this before, but they said they were watching like how I interacted with my team and stuff, and that so many of my decisions were driven by fear. And that really hit home for me, because you don't realize how those subconscious beliefs and those fears and stressors of growing up feeling unstable, you do everything in your power to like, gloss over the stability that you can bring to your life. But you really do need to go back and address those issues. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that now, which is so exciting. When I think half of Western society is, has depression at some point in their life. And like you said, 1 in 4, 1 in 5, it's really super common, right? We need to be talking about this stuff more. And so you are leading the charge, and I will get there eventually.
It's a journey. And it's maybe you will, maybe you won't, right? So, I mean, if I'm super candid, when I did ayahuasca for the first time in January of 2020, I don't know why. It was a surprise to me, but it showed me on stage speaking at a conference. And it was like, the message was like, I'm at an accounting conference. And it was like, sharpen your message here, use this particular tool.
Wow.
And then it was like part of your soul's, part of your soul's destiny is to help other accountants who had childhood trauma like you did. And I was like, at that time, I was actually kind of resistant to accounting, because I'll be honest, like, accountants are cheap when it comes to the non-technical development.
No, not
I say this, I say this as like, I was on the Cal CPA Education Foundation for 6 years and saw those financials. Like, out of your mouth, you say you want that, but you don't put your money where your mouth is when it comes to that development. And so when ayahuasca told me that, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to stop being resistant, and I'm just going to go all in and go for it.
Yeah. All right. So as we kind of wrap up our hour, I'd like to ask you, which we've probably touched kind of a bit around this, but I'm kind of curious, what's one of the hardest lessons that you've learned in life, and something that you really feel like could benefit other people for hearing it?
Yeah, I'll share one that I'm struggling with now, because I haven't even mastered it, which is my ability to receive.
Okay.
Like, it is because I just grew up very having to be independent at a young age and doing things for myself. And so there's a way in which my autopilot, I just do all by myself, and I'm not good at asking for help and receiving. And I think that it permeates everything, right? It permeates how I live with my partner, it permeates how I lead, working with a group. We're consultants, not employees, but still like how we collaborate. Like I don't ask for help. They'll ask me, how can they help? But I think that's a big one that I'm still working on.
Okay. No, I love that. I appreciate you bringing up the fact that we're all a work in progress. There's always going to be things that we're struggling with and trying to work through, but at least you're cognitive of it and you can recognize it. That is a really tough one. I'm trying to think of a good book to recommend, and I don't have anything for you.
I don't think the answer is going to come to me of there. I don't think.
All right. Dang it, our minds can't control that one. Okay, got it. Awesome. Anything else that you would like to share, and how can people contact you if they maybe want to get coaching or want to see more about what you're doing?
Yeah, you can see more about what we're doing at conscious.cpa, and I can be reached at amber@conscious.cpa, or you can follow me on LinkedIn. Anytime I'm writing articles or sharing insights or, trying to wake the profession up to what's possible and saying, hey, these things aren't working. I'm pretty vocal there. And I'm delighted to connect with people. If there's anything that, people are curious about, inspired by, I love hearing from people. So I would warmly welcome an email again at amber@conscious.cpa.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, I have to ask, final question. When does someone need coaching? Is like the typical person that's walking down the road, can anyone benefit from coaching?
In theory, yes, but you have to want it. And so I think if you hit this moment in life where you're like, I just can't tolerate status quo anymore, that would be a good point. Another good point would be, I know I need to make a change and I'm struggling to make that change. Like there's a part of me that knows I need to do something different, but what's predictable is I'll feel that way. And then, oh my God, there's a client emergency or it's a busy season and I forget about it and I just get busy. And then when it comes back to stillness, that thing's still there. A coach can really help you stay accountable for the change that you desire, that you really need to make.
Nice. Well said. Thank you so much, Amber, for being here. It's always such a pleasure to hang out with you, and hopefully we'll get to see each other soon.
Yeah, it was great to be here and great to see you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the Concierge CPA, hosted by TaxPlanIQ. We believe that every person has a unique message that can positively impact the world. If you are a successful accounting firm owner or influencer who would like to be on this program, please visit JackieMeyerCPA.com, JackieMeyerCPA.com to apply. Please share this on social media and rate us so we can continue our good work. Join our Facebook group called Accounting Firm Influencers, or connect with me on most platforms under Jackie Meyer CPA. Thanks for being accountable to transforming our industry today.